Hello! Welcome to a video that will appeal to a very small subsection of the internet. Today we're going to talk about a handful of the major Disney television animation properties and how they would look if they were adapted into worlds for the Kingdom Hearts series. I'm making this in the aftermath of Regular Pat's Cage 4 World Watch series, which you should all go watch cause it's great. The basic premise of those videos was taking a look at all the different Disney properties that haven't been in KH and discussing their chances of getting into Cage 4, as well as what they might look like as worlds. This obviously restricted those videos somewhat to properties that, actually stood a chance, but I still thought it would be fun as someone who has watched a lot of DTVA's output to talk about how those properties would be implemented into KH. The main purpose of this video is to do some fun fantasizing, though inevitably there's going to be some discussion of how realistic their chances are. I'm not going to comprehensively discuss every DTVA property because that would both be way too much work and would make the video way too long. I'm going to be discussing 6 specific shows that I have watched extensively and really want to talk about in a Kingdom Hearts context. These are also the shows I tend to see talked about the most in KH circles, so they seem to be the most relevant. After that, I'll talk generally about some older stuff in a last-ditch effort to make it sound like I covered a lot in this video. But fair warning, I am not here to pretend that any of these actually have a chance of making it in. This is all just for the fun of it. Okay, let's begin. Man, I love Gravity Falls so much. It's my favorite show ever, and I find that the grander internet tends to agree that this is one of the best animated shows to have come out in recent memory. Brief premise explanation: twin siblings Dipper and Mabel are staying in the mysterious town of Gravity Falls for the summer with their eccentric great-uncle and discover the town is filled with all manner of weird monsters to get into wacky hijinks with. So immediately this is a perfectly iconic setting. Kinda telling when the show is named after the place. Implementing the main town, the woods, the lake, and the mystery shack would make for an amazing world for Sora to run around in. Heartless invading the falls is easy enough to visualize. Dipper and Mabel would be on top of that right away and would inevitably run into Sora, Donald, and Goofy in their efforts to combat the new threat. Naturally, the twins would be your two party members. They aren't exactly known for their combat prowess, but I think Weirdmageddon 3 provides enough of a basic combat template for them to build off of. I would love the world to play out like a mystery story since that's one of the biggest conceits of the show. Maybe the group is investigating how the Heartless got into Gravity Falls because something leads them to believe there's a mastermind behind it. Sora could doubt Dipper's mystery-solving ability since he's so young, but the twins could quickly prove themselves. It would also be funny to see how Dipper interprets the existence of Donald and Goofy. Most KH worlds just kind of pretend that they're completely normal despite being anthropomorphic animals, but Dipper is not the kind of character who would let that slide. Mabel would probably think they're cute though. Ideally, the narrative takes you through all the most iconic locations from the show as you try to solve the mystery surrounding the Heartless. You could pretty much pull any monster from the series for a mid-world boss, thinking gnomes, the Summerween Trickster, the Gobblewonker, or make something completely original. As long as it's weird, it'll fit right in. But of course, the final boss has to be Bill Cipher. I don't care how you have to explain it, he opens a rift in space-time that's spilling Heartless out, maybe he has a direct link to the Realm of Darkness, I don't know, he's a godlike being, you can make it work. The world should probably be set somewhere in Season 2 of the series, so that Bill is an established threat, but the kid's summer hasn't ended yet, obviously. Whether or not to include Ford is kind of a head-scratcher, I could see it going either way. Ford's presence does raise the stakes of the overarching narrative of the show, so Sora being around for that might be jarring, but that narrative is also the thing a lot of people really love about the show, myself included, so there should be at least some nods to it. Oh, and my pitches for Keyblade names would be Tourist Trap, Summer Memories, or just simply Anomaly. Leave your pitches in the comments. Oh, and if form changes come back, this one's gotta change to a grappling hook. I've got some mixed emotions when talking about Starverses, as I'm sure most people who stuck around through Season 4 would, but it felt worth discussing despite the bitter aftertaste. This is basically just a magical girl show for those unaware. Interdimensional Princess Star Butterfly comes to Earth and wreaks havoc. Her and Marco are the obvious party members. Interesting how most of these shows have such a perfect duo of party members to work with. I think the most interesting debate here is where to set the world because this one has two very distinct halves, Earth and Muni. Muni being an alternate reality magical kingdom definitely sounds more fun to explore, but the world designers would have to do a lot of creative work to realize it. Muni never really had a strong sense of place to me in the show. The castle was really the only part that felt like it had any sort of rigid structure, and part of that's just because the show's vibe leans more chaotic. I'm sure it could be done, but I have trouble visualizing set pieces for Sora to explore. There's no shortage of potential with storylines for Sora to go through. The show plays so fast and loose with location and conflict that it's honestly hard to even fathom narrowing a story down for a Kingdom Hearts adaptation. My immediate first thought was the Season 3 premiere, Battle for Muni, just because it features both Ludo and Toffee as antagonists, and those would be the boss fights I would want to have in this world. But the actual episode has very little in terms of action set pieces, and separates Star and Marco for most of it. So maybe the Season 1 finale? No, that also separates Star and Marco, and the fight with Toffee isn't really a fight. So I guess we either have to rework these episodes a bit, or maybe we just have to forego using Toffee entirely. Keep it simple and use Ludo as the main antagonist. I suppose you can pull from the later seasons with Meteora and Mina, but I barely remember anything about them, which is pretty damn telling, huh? Okay, I shouldn't be too mean. Honestly, rewatching some of the show for this project reminded me of all the parts that were actually really good. But anyway, yeah, the possibilities are endless here. The entire world could be set in a completely original dimension if they really wanted to, and it would be right in line with the show's energy. Though I am requiring a sequence where we go inside Star's wand. That was always a source of great imagery, and I just want to see Sora running around in there. Oh, and Tom's gotta be involved somehow. Shout out to Eclipse too, I'm sure there's fun stuff you could do with her. Only got 2 Keyblade pitches here, Butterfly Blade or Narwhal Blast. Jumping ahead in the DTVA timeline, let's talk about the Owl House, a very real contender for my favorite show ever if it manages to stick the landing with its ending. Quick premise, Nerd Girl discovers the demon realm and decides to live there and become a witch. Once again, easy 2 party members here with Luce and Ida, though that leads to an interesting problem. Luce is pretty underpowered through most of Season 1, but Ida gets nerfed by the time Season 2 rolls around, so I suppose the world would have to be set in that sweet spot towards the end of Season 1 where both Luce and Ida are able to fight effectively. That does mean we lose out on some fun stuff, namely Lumity and Hunter, but I think ultimately this is the right call. Of course, we could instead shift it to late Season 2 and let Ida lean super hard on her Harpy mode, but we'd really be missing out on the cool stuff she's able to do at her peak. As for story, I think the world would do well to make an original story playing into the show's early themes about accepting weirdos and sticking together, celebrating differences and whatnot. I could see Sora, Donald, and Goofy not being very welcome in Bonesboro after Sora stands up against an unjust arrest or something, leading them to take refuge in the titular Owl House where they meet the gang and get wrapped up in Ida's latest scheme. This is one where I don't necessarily see the Heartless influencing the main plot too much. They'd probably come off as just another monster that the locals are fairly capable of dispatching, though if Sora butts heads with the Emperor's Coven at the start, then the group's motivation throughout the story could easily be an effort to try and topple that regime, leading to a boss fight against Lilith, Kikimora, Bellos, you know the drill. Though a large demon or monster from the show would also be a welcome fight. I suppose they can't blatantly succeed against Bellos by the end, or else they would drastically change the course of the show, but they could totally just pull a winning in gameplay but losing in cutscenes sort of deal. King would of course be right there alongside the main crew, probably making a guest appearance in the team attack. The Boiling Isles as a world has more than enough to work with for an interesting environment, and swinging by Hexside to check up on Willow, Gus, and Amity couldn't hurt. Some Keyblade pitches, Wild Witch, Emperor's Blight, or for a sillier one, Hoot Hoot. And where there's an Owl House analysis, an Amphibia one is sure to follow. Definitely not my favorite between the two shows, but it's still really good despite the myriad of issues I have with it. Premise, teenage girl gets trapped in a land of anthropomorphic frogs and must find her way back home with the help of her surrogate frog family. The 2 party members here have to be Anne and Sprig, but the other planters should get something to do in the team attack. I would also list Sasha and Marcy, but, well, let's get into that. When we set this world is going to drastically change how it operates. The same was true for the other shows, as I talked about then, but this one is especially challenging to pinpoint what would work best. Like, on principle, the world has to include an explorable Wartwood, but focusing the world there would mean it pretty much have to take place during Season 1, meaning we miss out on both Sasha and Marcy, arguably the most beloved part of the show. But if we do Season 2, which is mostly a long road trip to Newtopia, we can't really justifiably use Wartwood, can we? I suppose we can make it a sort of fast travel thing, set it in late Season 2 where we have access to Joe Sparrow and use him to fast travel between Wartwood, Newtopia, and maybe even Toad Tower. If we commit to that, we can use Sasha, Marcy, and even Andreas as friendly characters, since they were all on good terms at this point. But then there's the question of who we're fighting. All the main antagonists are our friends at this point in the series, so do we set it later so we can have an Andreas and Sasha/Grime boss fight? We could use the Season 2 finale as the set piece for that, but again, that sort of limits our explorable locations to just Newtopia. We can maybe jump ahead to late Season 3 and use that to orchestrate the major fights against Andreas or even Darcy, but that would make the explorable world apocalyptic and kind of drab in my opinion. I want to run around Amphibia when it's not dark and destroyed. So I think I'm leaning towards late Season 2 with an original plot, though I'm not against maybe starting the world in Wartwood, moving to Newtopia, and then just committing to doing the Season 2 finale so we get some iconic fights in. Though the way that episode ends would make our party members unavailable for any post-game revisit, so I don't know. No matter what, Amphibia is sure to be a fun world to explore. I wonder if Sora, Donald, and Goofy would have to transform into frogs for this world. I think there's some potential for the story to revolve around them trying to help Anne find an alternative way out of Amphibia, since SDG clearly didn't get there using the music box. That might be a good vehicle to explore the world without being beholden to an episode-specific plot. Maybe SDG discover Andreas' true nature separate from the planters and a fight can happen that way? But then, why wouldn't they tell them about it afterwards? See why this is kind of difficult to piece together. I'm sure there's some obvious way to have our cake and eat it too, but my brain is too small to think of it. If anything, bosses against giant amphibia creatures can work just fine. Keyblade Pitches, Honorary Planter, Tadpole Terror, and Boom Shroom, and it's gotta have some tennis racket or Warhammer form change, or both. Now that we've gotten through 4 of these, let's come back down to Earth for a second and talk about their chances. I say Owl House and Amphibia are the most likely since they're both recent shows and are very highly regarded, though Disney's treatment of the Owl House specifically leads me to believe they won't be using it much once it ends. I'd give Gravity Falls the bronze just because of how much prestige that show has built up in its decade of existence. Starverse, while certainly fun to consider, fits pretty comfortably on the bottom of the list. But let's be real, none of these are going to happen. It's easy to forget when you're in these communities on the internet that obsess over these shows, but the general public, and likely the greater Kingdom Hearts fanbase, has no idea these shows exist. I know KH has pulled some obscure stuff in the past, but even stuff like the original Tron is at least a faint whisper in the public consciousness. Even if you haven't seen the movie, I'm sure the name Tron rang a bell when you heard it. It's permeated into pop culture in a sense. None of the shows we've talked about can really claim that. They're on an entirely different level of obscurity. Like, look at this poster from D23 with a million different Disney references on it. The only DTVA thing on here is Angel from the Lilo & Stitch series, so at its core, a film property. Hell, Kingdom Hearts is referenced on this thing before any truly original DTVA material, implying Kingdom Hearts is less obscure than something like Amphibia or Gravity Falls, not to mention that they're all 2D animation, which Cage seems to be leaning away from. But it's not all doom and gloom, because there are at least 2 shows that I think actually did break through the public consciousness. DuckTales, the only DTVA property that has truly gotten representation in Kingdom Hearts. Through Union Cross medals. The characters of Scrooge, Huey, Dewey, and Louie have appeared in the KH series as shopkeepers, or what does Scrooge do? Host minigames, I guess? But these versions of the characters don't seem to be explicitly based on DuckTales, whether that be new or old. So DuckTales has definitely reached the public consciousness, and its ties to the greater Mickey Mouseverse only bolster its reputation. The 2017 reboot of the show is the thing that Disney obviously wants to push more nowadays, so how might that show be adapted for KH? Well, this is the first time I'm uncertain about how the party members would work. Like, you have to have Scrooge, but how do you organize the 4 kids? Do you just do Webby because she's the most effective in combat? But what would the triplets do? Kinda weird to exclude them since they've all been positioned as main protagonists of certain seasons. What makes the most sense to me would be to do what they did with San Francisco and just go with the lone figurehead. So Scrooge McDuck himself, emphasize his relationship with Donald and maybe play into that really hard. The kids can do work in team attacks or cutscenes. Though I'm getting ahead of myself because, if I'm honest, I don't think Duckburg would really work as a world. First of all, you'd have to jump through some hoops to explain the redesigns, which really isn't that big of a deal, but it is something to consider. More importantly, Duckburg is just a city, with a couple set pieces in the mansion and the money bin. It's kinda boring. If we're gonna represent DuckTales in KH, we should lean into the fact that they're world travelers. I propose a side quest where, as we explore all the Disney worlds, we discover Launchpad's plane crash-landed into each of them and we'll have to help gather plane parts or some treasure for the ducks to help them get on their way. These little side quests can give each of the kids their moments to shine, and or dip into the Rogues Gallery with Flintheart Glomgold, Magica the Spell, Foul, etc. When we help them in every world, we of course get our DuckTales-themed Keyblade and confirmation that they made it back home safely. I think this is way more fun and true to the show than a dedicated world would be. Though to be clear, I will take a full Duckburg world. Getting to dive into the money bin might make my hang-ups null and void. Keyblade Pitches, Mark of a McDuck, Billionaire's Bounty, or if they really want to make us cry, Spear of Selene. And finally, let's talk about what I feel is the most likely DTVA property to ever get a KH world, Phineas and Ferb. I do think DuckTales is more iconic, but I firmly believe it would work better as something other than a world. Not to mention how the current KH versions of those characters might get in the way. Phineas and Ferb doesn't have any of those issues and is easily the biggest success DTVA has ever had. Barring that one Disney Junior section of Hollywood Studios, the only time I've ever seen DTVA characters in a Disney theme park has been Phineas and Ferb. And also Scrooge and Launchpad, but this isn't the DuckTales section of the video, dammit. I even remember there being a cute little game in Epcot's World Showcase themed around Phineas and Ferb, though admittedly that game was originally themed to Kim Possible and later themed to DuckTales. Anyway, point being, Phineas and Ferb was big and kind of still is, seeing as they milked that new movie out of them in 2020. As for how I would do their world, this is the only time I explicitly want to adapt a specific episode. Or should I say movie? I think the Second Dimension movie would work perfectly for a KH world for 2 main reasons. One, it makes the environment a little more engaging than the generic tri-state area of the base show, while still leaving room to explore iconic set pieces like Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated and the Flynn Fletcher house. And 2, it's a perfect vehicle for Sora to be able to interact with both the Phineas and Ferb side of the show and the Perry the Platypus side of the show, since this is the movie where Perry's status as a secret agent is revealed to the boys. I just think pulling a Disney Infinity and getting to play with Phineas and Perry as the two party members, instead of the basic Phineas and Ferb, would be way more fun and would represent the show better. And the Second Dimension movie provides plenty of perfect boss fights and cool action moments to really make the world shine. The Norm bots, the actually threatening Doofenshmirtz, the Goozum, that climax with all the different inventions. Hell, if you want, make it more Kingdom Heartsy and have the Second Dimension Doofenshmirtz use the Heartless to enhance his robot army. I'm certainly open to other suggestions for how this world could work, but I think this movie and Cage are a match made in heaven. Oh, and we all know that more than any other world in this video, this one has gotta have banger music. If we're leaning into Second Dimension, make Robot Riot the battle theme. Or hell, make it the Perry the Platypus theme, why not? Let Sora, Donald, and Goofy join the gang for a major musical number. This is the one time I want Cage to Atlantica mechanics to come back. And for one last silly Keyblade pitch, Keyblade-inator. Now, while I do think that this show is easily the most likely to get a world, that does not mean I actually think it's going to happen. As cool as it would be, I just think Kingdom Hearts has bigger priorities, and it's kind of hard to tell if any of this TV stuff is on their radar. Hell, are these shows even looked at fondly in Japan? That's not rhetorical, I'm asking, I really have no clue. A quick Google search leads me to inconclusive results, so if anyone actually knows, please leave a comment with the answer. In any case, it just seems hard to really justify including television content over film content. Film is just so much easier to watch and share due to the shorter format and thus more immediately recognizable and marketable in the context of a KH game. If a show isn't currently airing, Disney doesn't make much of an effort to sell it in any form or make use of the brand. So why prioritize it over something like a Moana, or a Coco, or a Star Wars, or even older Disney movies people want to see represented? Especially with the number of total Disney worlds in these games dwindling, I just don't see it happening. But let's cover a couple more bases anyway. The Disney Afternoon was basically the Disney TV programming block in the 80s and 90s, so just consider this section to be for the oldies. Right out the gate, let's talk about shows that are based off some pre-existing property. Or more accurately, let's not talk about them. Sorry, I just don't see these as particularly interesting topics of conversation. These shows are only ever going to get represented as cute references amidst worlds based off the greater property. In fact, we've kind of already seen that in the KH series with Sparky and Birth by Sleep, which is technically from a movie, but that movie was made by DTVA and acted as the pilot for the Lilo and Stitch series, so it counts. Point being, shows like Rescue Rangers, Tailspin, Goof Troop, Timon and Pumbaa, etc. are never getting their own worlds, but are in the front lines to get cute references. Anyway, let's talk about the more original Disney Afternoon stuff. We're talking about Gummy Bears, Darkwing Duck, Bonkers, and so on. My prevailing thought with these shows as KH worlds is they're very cartoony. Which, I mean, hey, there's plenty of fun to be had there, and most would say that every Disney movie is cartoony. I guess I'm just having trouble visualizing these shows as worlds. Kingdom Hearts has never been shy about working with stuff that was sillier or didn't have overarching stories. They've adapted Fantasia and Steamboat Willie for crying out loud. But I think the job takes a more creative and familiar mind than my own, which is why I'm lumping the discussion of these shows together. Though I would be remiss not to point out Gargoyles. Not only does this show stick out like a sore thumb in the Disney Afternoon set with its darker atmosphere and grander story, but it was apparently at some point considered for Kingdom Hearts. The only source I could find on that claim was this one panel with the Gargoyles creators, but hey, it's probably the closest thing we've ever had to DTVA stuff getting in. And yeah, I think Gargoyles would fit great. I haven't seen it personally, but Goliath looks like he'd make an awesome party member, the dark New York setting seems cool as hell, I see no reason why it wouldn't work. But yeah, with Gargoyles as well as all these Disney Afternoon shows, the time just seems to have passed for it, and I don't really have much to chew on with them. So this is my catch-all category for shows that I remember watching back in the 2000s and would feel weird not bringing up, but I'm also fully aware don't have much to discuss with them. The original shows that stand out the most to me from this awkward little set are Kim Possible and American Dragon Jake Long. American Dragon is definitely just something that sounds fun by title alone. A kid who can turn into a dragon would make for an awesome party member, and the general magic and action vibes I could very easily see slipping into Kingdom Hearts. But that's about it. It's not like this show was super beloved or long-standing. Kim Possible is definitely more of a talking point, possibly the biggest animated hit from this group of shows. It was the original version of that Epcot game I mentioned. Of course, Kim Possible's secret agent premise with an iconic rogues gallery and fun characters, not to mention a perfect duo of party members with Kim and the ever-endearing Ron Stoppable, makes it such a perfect fit for Kingdom Hearts that it's honestly a shame that I'm not currently willing to refresh myself on the show enough to talk about it more. Again, the time for it has simply passed. If it's any consolation, writing this video got me to add Call Me Beat Me to my Disney playlist. And despite that rule that I established like a paragraph ago, we should also talk a bit more about that Lilo and Stitch series, just because it's proven itself relevant to the conversation. This is now its third time being mentioned in the script after all. If they ever did want to commit to a Lilo and Stitch world actually set in Hawaii, using the formula of the show and having SDG helping a stray experiment find their ohana would be adorable. Not to mention how the show liked to cross over with other 2000 shows. We already talked about Kim Possible and American Dragon, but turns out Recess and Proud Family also hung out with Stitch & Co. I've seen maybe one episode of each of these shows, so I don't have much to say, but if this Lilo and Stitch world idea is ever realized, maybe all these 2000s dorks can cameo somewhere in there. That'd be nice. And finally, we should talk about those Disney Channel live-action sitcoms. My cynical ass, of course, doesn't feel like any of them would fit. This is prime Kingdom Hearts meme material right here. Isn't it funny to say that Cory in the House will be in KH, or That's So Raven, or fucking Hannah Montana? Like, if the KH team really wanted to, they probably could pull it off, but why would they ever want to? I'm not trying to say these shows are objectively bad or anything, but I do think these shows, more than anything else Disney has made, are the most dated. Every single one of these dates itself on arrival. Look, if you want some more positive thoughts, I think Wizards of Waverly Place would honestly be kind of fun. 2 clear party members with magical abilities, some interesting settings, more solid themes, and sense of overarching narrative. I could see it, but I don't want to. Okay, so yeah, I think that's about everything that I feel qualified enough to talk about. It's hard to earnestly go in depth on shows further back in the DTVA timeline because of their quickly dwindling relevance, but I hope this has sufficed. And really, it's a shame that I can't hold out more hope for some of these making it into KH, because I honestly think the formula of TV episodes lends itself really well to how Disney World visits work in KH. They're short, episodic narratives meant to condense the spirit and themes of the source material into easily consumable chunks. Is that not just how an episode of a series works? And some of these properties are my favorite pieces of media ever. So I guess I just hope that you all had as much fun as I did chatting about some of this stuff and appreciating these shows. Just don't say I gave you any false hope for these things actually getting into Kingdom Hearts. I don't know if I could handle the burden of having done that. Some quick honorable mentions to Big City Greens, The Ghost of Molly McGee, Descendants, and every other DCOM under the sun. I haven't watched much of this stuff, and I really just didn't want to research and talk about them if I'm being perfectly honest. Sorry to those fans. Feel free to start discussions about them in the comments, or make your own follow-up video to this one. I'd watch it. Again, if you haven't, go watch Regular Pat's KH4 World Watch series, the inspiration for this video. It's fantastic. Alright, goodbye. Oh, and real quick, if you're watching this video when it premieres, then hey, happy March Caprice 3! If it's anything like the Kingdom Hearts series, then the third one is going to obviously be the best one. So excited to be a part of this year. I had a lot of fun watching stuff for the past 2 March Caprices, so glad to actually be making something for it. So yeah, stick around, because there's probably going to be something really cool coming up right after me, and thank you to the whole March Caprice team for letting me be here. Alright, see ya!